In 1974, I fell in love with the most beautiful girl at university. It was my first year at university, and we met at the orientation camp for first-year students. She was stunning, and I don't know how we fell in love really. Nevertheless, we had a 6-month relationship. It was a tempestuous relationship. In our day, we were a little bit like Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. And inevitably, the relationship broke up, and I was devastated. So to console myself, I caught up with my dear friend, a good friend, Nick. Went round to his place, we had a couple of beers, and we shared in a pizza. And I began to go through all the details of this tempestuous relationship with my poor old friend Nick, and he listened intently. I went through every little detail, every moment, every date, every incident, every story, and I explained to him the significance of my deep sense of loss and grief over the breaking up of this relationship of the century. But after a while, and Nick was listening very patiently, I realised I'd been talking for a while. So I leant forward to Nick and I said, "Nick, am I going on about this too much?" Nick paused, looked at me gently and said, "Yes." Now, he was right, and it pulled me right up, and I realised I'd lost all perspective. But the point of this story is that only a good friend can tell us the truth about our lives. Friendship, in particular good friends, trusted friends, cherished friends, are like pure gold. When I look back on my life, I can name the good friends. Those people who added something to my life with their humour, their gentleness, their insight, and the capacity to speak openly and plainly about our relationship and about things that were going on. We know the value of friendship. We've had good friends. We know what it's like to lose a good friend and to grieve over the loss of a good friend. We also know those times in life where we are friendless and how bereft we feel without having a decent or a good friend in our life. What I want to do today is to pick up the concept of friendship, because it's important, and it's a very important concept within the Christian tradition, and it also has a political application. Specifically, I want to talk about the ethos and the practice of friendship as a way of addressing issues of injustice, not only confronting those issues of injustice, but offering an alternative. So let's begin this exploration with the politics of Jesus, and in particular the Gospel of John. In the Gospel of John today, within the Christian tradition, many churches are reading from John chapter 17. It's the prayer of Jesus. Shortly after this, he goes to the cross. It's a poignant prayer. Quite beautiful as a piece of literature. It's a very moving. It's reflective, and the heart of the reflections in this prayer by Jesus are his concern for his friends. That's the main consideration in this prayer. He's praying for his friends. He's not thinking about the disciples, which is a kind of objective or clinical term. He's thinking about his friends. Now, normally we don't associate the Gospel of John with a gospel of being about social justice or challenging unjust structures. But the concept of friendship, in particular the friendships that Jesus inaugurates, have a sharp political edge to them. It's in this context we can genuinely talk about the politics of Jesus, which finds its locus and its expression in his friends and the friendships that they share. So this is chapter 17. Let's go back to the beginning of the section. The beginning of the section is chapter 13. From chapter 13 to chapter 20, This is like the extended passion narrative of the Gospel of John. And in chapter 13, it begins with that wonderful story where Jesus washes the feet of his disciples. And shortly into the exercise, the Apostle Peter takes umbrage that Jesus, the rabbi, wants to wash his feet. And of course, and this is typical for the role that Peter plays, Peter doesn't get it. Because what Jesus is offering is not only an act of service, but a new way of relating. He is communicating to the disciples that the order of Jesus, that this coming reign of God is a new order. It's not based on master and slave, rabbi and disciple. It's based on a community of friends. So in this context, of course, he begins to encourage, to exhort his disciples or his friends to love one another. This is a recurring theme from chapter 13 on to the end of the Gospel. But what it does is it establishes a platform, and the platform consists of a new set of relationships. This is a community based on the ethos and practice of friendship. And the ethos and practice of friendship in this community will be expressed in and through love. Now, shortly after that, in chapter 15, and this is after a series of texts where he reminds them of the importance of love, he underlines the importance of this new status and says to them very directly, "But I have called you friends." Don't you get it? There's a new status now, a new set of relationships, a new network. It is a network based on friendship that finds its expression in love. So if we come back to this prayer, this beautiful prayer in chapter 17, Jesus is openly, movingly praying for his friends, that they will be safe, that they will be supported, that they will be nurtured. The politics of Jesus is none other than a politics of friendship, which challenges and subverts the unjust structures of his era. Now, let's translate this politics of Jesus, this politics of friendship, to our own era. During the week, there were some very moving images coming out from India, where literally thousands of migrant workers had lost their jobs because of the impact of the COVID-19 virus, and were literally trekking, 1,000 kilometres across India, returning to their home villages because they were destitute. Children, men and women, all shapes and sizes, were making this terrible journey. Now, obviously, there are some cultural issues here that pertain to India that I don't pretend to be au fait about, but we do know that the Indian economy, like the Australian economy or the American economy, aspires to a certain pattern of behaviour. Particularly the middle class in all those countries expect a certain lifestyle, expect to be free, autonomous, and also to be wealthy, and to be free to make money and to accumulate wealth. And we often describe this way of thinking as the market economy. Now, the ideology of the market economy is we're all equal. The wealth will trickle down and everybody will be looked after. But we know that just isn't true. In fact, when we look at a global perspective, there are migrant workers in India, domestic servants throughout the world, as well as migrant workers in America and Australia, who and workers in the garment industry, who are treated abysmally. They are really bond servants. In other words, the premise of this market economy, which is in fact strictly controlled, the premise of this is that there are other groups, there are other minority groups, there are individuals and communities who are the scapegoats. They prop up the system. The system only works because groups within our countries have been devalued. They have no value. They are not treated as people of innate value. Which brings us back to the politics of friendship. The model that Jesus presents to us represents a radical critique of these structures of domination. They highlight the fact that these structures of domination, where there are masters and slaves, work on the fact that thousands of people in our countries and in the world are devalued. They have no intrinsic worth. They are not treated as fully human. In this context, in the friendship of Jesus and the politics that goes with it, there are no scapegoats. Every person is of intrinsic value. In this context, money is not the sole measure of the value of a person. In this context, each person is of innate and infinite value. In this context, the big issue is not controlling things, managing things, avoiding risk, being frightened of contingencies and possibilities of things going wrong. The premise in this model is the premise of trust. It's about a new ethos, an ethos and practice of friendship. Now, I'm not proposing for a moment that we can be friends with everyone. You and I will have our own precious friends, good friends. And those friendships can serve as a model for us about a new ethos and practice. An ethos and practice which considers from the beginning the innate value of every person, which seeks to treat people with respect, that enters into relationships of cooperation and collaboration for the common good, that works together for the common good on the basis of trust. In other words, we accept the fact that life and relationships are risky, but we think it's worthwhile in the name of friendship, working together, living together, and aspiring for something different. It's a long time since I was at university and a lot has happened. And I can't really remember many details about that poor girl I went out with for 6 months. Must have been a bit of a nightmare for her, but I can't remember many of the details. But I do remember my friend Nick, and I remember his generosity, his patience, his transparency, his capacity to speak to me the truth in love. And that memory, the memory of a friendship, of a good friend, is so precious. And really, that's the essence. That's the essence of the politics of Jesus. Jesus is innately political because he's got a new way of thinking, of seeing. And it's based upon a new configuration, a new kind of community, a community of friends. And the ethos and the practice of friendship offers to us in these difficult days a new paradigm where each person is valued, where we work together in the name of love, where collaboration is the key, and those relationships are courageous because they are grounded in and nurtured by a deep sense of mutual trust. In the name of God, Creator, Redeemer and Sustainer. Amen.